Have you ever received data where the same value is written 10 different ways? They all mean the same thing, but if you're building reports or pivot tables or dashboards, this inconsistency becomes a huge problem. And most people will fix this using find and replace over and over again. But today, I'll show you a much smarter approach. We'll be building a mapping table in Power Query that cleans every variation automatically. And even better, when new variations appear the next month, you won't have to edit your query. You'll simply update your mapping table and click refresh. So today we're solving a problem every data analyst eventually encounters: standardizing inconsistent values. So let's jump in. I have these two tables. The first contains transaction data. As you can see, we have a transaction ID, just random customer names, as you can see, and then a state value. And as you can see, all these are inconsistent. And what we want to do is we want to standardize these values. And then we have a sales column. Now, these, as you can see, these are all Illinois initially, but then we have other states here. If we scroll down, California, etc. And uh, but Power Query has no way of knowing that these are all Illinois because they're not standardized. They're all inconsistent. Now our second table is called our state mapping table. And so we have values here that what we want to do, if it equals one of these values in this original column, we want to standardize it with the values over here. So instead of manually fixing hundreds or even thousands of rows, we're going to let Power Query perform the lookup for us. Now let's load both of these tables into Power Query. But let's first create them as Excel tables. So I'm going to select here, Control T. Yes, my data has headers. Click OK. And then we're going to name it. So we come up here, table design, and we're just going to call it TBL transactions. Press enter. We're going to do the same thing for the state mapping table. We're going to press Control T. Table has headers, and we're going to name it table TBL state mapping. Press enter. So let's go back to this one. We're gonna right click, and then we're gonna get data from table or range. It's gonna load this into Power Query. Give it a few seconds. And then once we load it into Power Query, we're going to come back and we're going to do the same thing for the state mapping table. Okay, now we got this table in here. Okay, now let's go up to Home, Close and Load, and we're going to do a close and load. And what this will do is it'll create a table and a sheet for us. Okay, and now let's go over to the state mapping table and do the same thing. Right click. Okay, let's just rename these queries, and we're just going to call it state mapping. And then we're going to call this just transactions. Press enter. And then the state mapping table, we're just going to do a close and load to connection. Create a connection, click OK. Okay. Now let's go into Power Query. Let's reload this, double click on here to transactions query, and we're going to merge these two tables together. So we're going to go to Home and then Merge Queries. And then our top table here is going to be our transaction table. But we're also going to be doing a left outer join. So the top table is going to be our left table. And then the bottom table is going to be the mapping table. State mapping. Okay. And now what we need to do is we need to, when we do a merge query, we want to be able to merge these queries based on a common column. So in this case, we're going to select the state column in the transactions table or the left query. And then the right query, we're going to be selecting the original column. And then we're going to leave a left outer join. And then we're going to click OK. And then I'll explain more about this merging and left outer join shortly. Let's click OK. Now notice that nothing has really changed. But let's look at this merged column. Now every row now contains a small little table, as you can see here by the word table. Now think of this as Power Query attaching the matching record from the mapping table to every single transaction. And we've just opened those little tables. We haven't just opened up those little tables yet. Now let's expand these tables here. Now click the expand icon. And then we're going to choose standardize only. Uncheck. We only want to do the standardized column. So uncheck that and uncheck the original. And the original, now let's click OK. Now as you can see, the standardized value came through. The state column is still in a messy format. So we're going to take care of that in a second. Now, I always keep both of these columns, the state and standardized one, temporarily so I can verify that the lookup worked correctly before replacing the original data. So now let's clean this query up. Let's delete the state column. So we're going to right click the state column and then click remove. Okay. And at this point, the transformation is finished. Now, every variation has been replaced with a single consistent value. Now, this makes your reports and pivot tables and dashboards much more reliable because the abbreviation of IL, which is Illinois, and Illinois spelled out are no longer treated as different categories. Okay, so let's double click on here. Let's rename this to state. Press enter. Now what we want to do is load this clean table back to Excel. Now since I originally did a close and load to the table originally, once I close this, it's going to update that sheet. So let's go close and load. Okay, now we have a clean table, okay, that has our standardized values in the state column, meaning, let's click over here. These are the standardized values. So we mapped or merged these two tables together. We brought back the standardized column, which is what we want. So let's go over here. Now, the best part about this is now we're going to add a new transaction to the transaction table, which is this one here, the original. So let's do a control down arrow. Let's go down to the next row. And what we want to do is we want to add a new transaction. So it's going to be 12. Oop, escape. 1201. Tab into that. And then we're just going to randomly 41, tab into that. It's going to be ILLINOIS space with brackets US, and then we're going to 100. Okay, we got a new record in here. So now let's see what happens when we refresh this query. So let's go back over here to the query, and I'm going to show you something here, just to show you something. Transaction ID. Let's search for the record that we just added, which is transaction ID 1201. Okay, no matches. So that means that this record is not in there yet. So, but it will be in a second. So let's go here and let's hit refresh. Okay, you can see that we had 200 transactions before here on the right. Now we got to 201. So now let's go over here. Let's look for the record. Okay, and it added it. Now you may be asking, well, why is the state count blank? Okay, now this new row, okay, didn't map correctly because what we had in the record over here, let's go over here, this right here, this value right here, because the Illinois space and then in parens US doesn't exist yet in this mapping table. So in other words, this value right here does not exist anywhere in this table. So if we go back over here, okay, it added the new transaction ID, etc., but it left the state blank. Now, why is that? Now, imagine Power Query asking the mapping table, okay? It's going to ask the mapping table this question. I have a state value of IL, which you'll see right here. Do we have a match? Meaning the mapping table is going to reply yes, meaning do we have a match of IL in the transaction table that's equal to over here in this mapping table? If it does, it's going to bring back Illinois like what you see here. So now let's say again, Power Query asks another thing. I have Illinois, comma, USA. In other words, this value right here exists in the transaction table somewhere in this table. Let's scroll back up here, Illinois, USA. Is this value right here in the state mapping table? And if it is, it's going to come back and say yes. Now, the next question is, we get back over here. Okay. Now Power Query is going to ask the same question. Do we have Illinois, this value over here? Does it exist somewhere in this column? And the question is, no, it's not found. Sorry, I don't have anything that matches that. Since there was no match, Power Query had nothing to return. So that's why we wound up with a blank value here. It wasn't an error, but Power Query was actually telling us I looked for it and I couldn't find anything. So the next question is, why was the entire row still added to the query after we refreshed it? Let's go back to what we did before. When we merged the queries, we did a left outer join. Power Query has two tables. It has the transactions table and the state mapping table. The mapping table doesn't contain this new value that we just added, which was Illinois, US yet. But with a left outer join, what Power Query does, if it does this, when it does a left outer join, it says, let's keep, okay, every transaction that's in the transaction table, even if there was no matches exist in the mapping table. So keep the transaction anyways. So the transaction wasn't deleted, it simply couldn't retrieve a standardized value. So again, let's ask another question. Why is it called a left outer join? So a left outer join literally means that let's keep every row in the left table, which is the transaction table, whether or not a match exists on the right, which is the state mapping table. So now let's add, okay, let's add this value here. Oh, let's go over back here. Let's add this value here, okay, to the state mapping table. And then we'll do a refresh and see what happens. Okay, so let's go over to the mapping table. Click on that, control down arrow. Let's add a new row. Okay, just a second. Okay, we're going to add a new row here. And the value here is going to be ILLINOIS space US, then tab over it. And the value that we want is actually Illinois. Okay. Now, watch what happens. This is the real power of mapping tables. Let's go back to our query and let's unfilter this. Let's do a refresh. Okay. So now look at what happened. Okay. We didn't edit the Power Query itself, the query itself, and we didn't rebuild the merge in Power Query. I didn't touch any transformation steps either. I simply taught the lookup table about a new variation, and Power Query handled everything automatically. So now what it did was it updated this record that we added and brought back the value for state, because now the value over here now exists in the mapping table. So it found the value and then it returned the value, the standardized value over here. This is why experienced analysts prefer mapping tables over find and replace. Your Power Query becomes a reusable process. As new variations appear, you maintain the lookup table, not the query itself. It's faster, easier to maintain, and much more scalable. So if you found this helpful, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more Excel and Power Query tutorials. And let me know in the comments, what's your messiest data set you've ever had to clean? I may use it in a future tutorial. And I want to thank you for watching. You taking your time out of your day to watch this. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye now.